Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, bonjour, namaste, ciao, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, rainy neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and so very delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two amazing guests for you today. First up, Marilyn Sadler will be here to celebrate It's Not Easy Being a Leprechaun. She'll also be telling us about exciting news that one of her books is being turned into a live-action series by Disney. And later in the show, we'll be meeting Jenny Young, the CEO and driving force behind Brooklyn Robot Foundry. Hey, I also would like to share some exciting news for you today. The very respected website FeedSpot, a great place to read your blogs, podcasts, news websites, YouTube channels, and RSS feeds, it just named Reading with Your Kids podcast to two of their lists. Reading with Your Kids is now number 5 on their 100 Best Children's Podcast list. And we're number 2 on the 60 Best Reading Podcast list. Want to thank the folks at FeedSpot, but we also want to thank all of you for helping us earn this recognition and for helping us make the world a better place by reading with your kids. Thanks so much, FeedSpot. Thank you so much, our wonderful listeners. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey, families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Join us right now from the absolutely beautiful city of Lexington in Kentucky. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called It's Not Easy Being a Leprechaun. Please welcome to the show, Marilyn Sadler. Hey, Marilyn, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you, Jed.
I'm delighted to have you on. You know, no one's ever accused me of being a leprechaun, but I am a short Irish guy, so I think I can probably relate to your book.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, the main character's name is Connor O'Connor, so that, as you know, is a very Irish name, first and last name in this case.
Very, very Irish name. Yes, indeed. Yeah. My beautiful wife and I were in Ireland a few months ago, and it's really neat how the stories of leprechauns and fairies are still very much alive in the country.
I've heard that, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. So let's talk about It's Not Easy Being a Leprechaun. What is making Connor's life so difficult?
Well, he's not happy because he's short. He thinks his ears are far too big, and he feels like he doesn't have any friends. They're only interested in a relationship with him because of his gold.
Ah, yes. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so he actually in the story sets out to try being other characters.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, ultimately at the end of the story, he realizes that there's no one better than who he is. And he goes back to being himself and, appreciating the qualities that he does have. It tends to look better on the other side of the fence, but in this case, it truly isn't. Mm-hmm. So it's a story about self-acceptance, identity, wanting to fit in, and in the process, he learns that it's okay to be different. In fact, it's the qualities that we think are weak in us are the ones that make us truly unique. So it's a journey that he goes on.
Yeah. This I read was a follow-up to your It's Not Easy Being a Ghost. It sounds like this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart.
Well, it is. And originally, it was, I think, the second book it was actually the second book I wrote in my life. And it was back in the early 80s. It was called It's Not Easy Being a Bunny. And it had a similar storyline. But anyway, that book is still selling very well. And it was the sales team at Random House that came up with the idea of doing a whole series of books using that title, but of course, substituting Bunny with all these other characters. And in addition, the idea was to make them seasonal books so that we're doing a book for Christmas, or we already have, of course, Halloween with It's Not Easy Being a Ghost, the Leprechaun for St. Patrick's Day. And there's there's a story coming out also about It's Not Easy Being a Dinosaur, which doesn't necessarily relate to a specific holiday, but it's really fun too.
Yeah. Why do you think helping our kids understand, why do you think so many kids have a hard time not feeling like they fit in?
I don't know. I think it's just inherent in so many young children because they're somewhat new to the world, and they have those early years at home with their families who love them, and then they go into this new and probably somewhat scary environment of schools and being with other children, and I think that's the first time they really begin to compare themselves to others. And I think that's probably it. I know when I was in grade school, I was very shy. And to this day, I'm still a rather shy person. But so I think that's just part of finding out who you truly are and learning to accept yourself for who you are and be proud of your differences. Because again, it is what makes you unique. But I think it's a journey most every young child goes through. Were you like that, Jed? Did you embrace kindergarten and elementary school with open arms?
There were different times. I look back and I know there were certainly were times in my life where I felt like I didn't fit in. Not so much in school, but when we'd go outside of the neighborhood and different places. And I definitely knew that there were times when I felt like I didn't fit in, and I was the only one experiencing certain things.
Yes.
Yeah. As you were talking, one of the things that I thought about is how really unusual it is that we send our kids to these buildings with 500 or 600 or 700 other kids. I think it's a relatively modern kind of concept. I mean, everybody thinks, oh yeah, kids go to school. But before the 1800s or so, you kind of grew up around family, around maybe 100 people in your life. And certainly never, you always had adults and family and people that you're close to, but never until the modern era had, kids been thrown into this big gang of other little kids who are trying to find their way.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And put on buses to get to school. I don't think many children are able to walk to schools today.
I've read newspaper articles where parents have been arrested because they've allowed their 8 or 9-year-old to walk to school, which blows my mind. It's crazy.
Yes, that's very sad. You used to you used to know everyone in your neighborhood and in the town where you lived. So other parents were vigilant of all children.
Yep.
So yeah, that life has changed.
Yeah,
I was a child, certainly.
Yeah. It's I was reading on your website, you've had a fascinating career, not only as the author of the It's Not Easy series, but you've had a very successful career in children's television. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I would love to. It's been a wonderful journey. The first show I think that was televised was Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, which was based on a book I had written by that same name. And Disney did a series of 3 movies featuring the Xenon character, which was I worked on with Roger Bolin, who I worked with very early in my career, and he's the illustrator of most all of the books that I've written. But yes, that was a hugely successful series of movies on the Disney Channel. And just last year, we were approached by Disney to do a live action series, which they are, working on right now. I'm not exactly sure when that'll be ready, probably next year sometime. It'll begin to air. But I love that it's going to be a series.
Yeah. That I'm imagining that must be every author's dream to have their children's book or their book be turned into a film or a television series. What was the feeling that you had when you received that first call that, hey, Disney's interested?
Oh, it was pretty exciting. And actually, it was, I think, the first time our agent at that point had stepped out, and she really was visiting Disney, I believe, to sell other projects. But whoever it was she was working with at that time at Disney was pregnant. And so she took this woman a gift of the book, Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, and she wasn't even selling it. She was just showing it or giving it as a gift to this woman at Disney. And it ended up becoming a series of movies because the woman obviously really loved the book and the storyline. So that's how that happened. It's so funny. Because, we work so hard at creating projects and selling them. And, sometimes we were lucky, but other times it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even getting the call recently from Disney about wanting to do a live action series came out of the blue. It wasn't something we had gone out and presented to them as a possibility.
Yeah.
So, it's funny how life is. Sometimes the harder you try, the less successful you are. It's when you just relax and enjoy life and find happiness throughout the day that I think things like that come about.
You know something? My goddaughter traveled from Australia to visit with us at Christmas time, and she's at a point in her life where she's actively looking, trying to find someone to spend the rest of her life with, and she asked me for advice, and as I thought back, I said, wow, I met my beautiful wife at a time where I just kind of sat back and said, I'm not going to look, we're just going to relax and enjoy life. And kind of the same thing when we found this home. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. I see that happening all the time in people's lives.
Yeah. Another thing that I saw is you had a connection with the folks at Reading Rainbow that has played a huge role in the life of the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yes. That was with the Alistair books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there were 3 or 4 of them on their show. LeVar Burton, yes, he was the one that read the books at the time.
Yeah. LeVar, I received a call. We launched Reading with Your Kids in 2017, and about a year after we launched, my son gave me a call one day out of the blue. It was a text, and he said, "You should have LeVar Burton on your show." And I said, yeah, I should have $1 million in the bank too, but neither one of those things are going to happen. And kind of joked about it. And then I thought, well, what could it hurt? And I searched for a contact and reached out. And a couple of days later, LeVar's people said he'd love to be on.
Oh,
and that I think that was very instrumental in the show taking off, and then and us being nominated for the iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award.
Oh, that's wonderful! I didn't know that you had received that award.
Well, we didn't receive it; we're nominated for it. But as everybody says, it's an honor just to be nominated.
Yes, it is. That's great.
You mentioned that. There's in the It's Not Easy series, the next book is about a dinosaur?
Yes.
Excellent. Which dinosaur are we going to meet?
A Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it's a little girl, and her name is Rexy.
Oh, neat. Where you have Connor O'Connor is such a neat name. Rexy is a really neat name. How do these names come? Do you just kind of write down a series of names, whatever pops into your mind, and you say this one, or do you know right off the bat, yes, Rexy, that's who I'm going to be writing about?
Well, when we were deciding on which dinosaur to use, and we had, this is with my editors, we had agreed upon Tyrannosaurus Rex. In fact, my one editor, she's kind of an expert on dinosaurs, Alice Janitis, and that was the dinosaur she had suggested. It's really, I thought, was perfect because it's an interesting looking dinosaur. It's large, so yeah, that's how that came about. And Rexy, well, that just seemed like a natural and a play, of course, on Tyrannosaurus Rex. So,
yeah, you have created another really fun character name, PJ Funny Bunny. That it doesn't kind of roll off the tongue, but I imagine I would have had a great time reading these stories to my son.
Oh yes, and that first book, that was only the second book I had ever written. The first book was for a publishing house in London, England, but that was back in the early 80s when It's Not Easy Being a Bunny was written. And Yeah, it's just he's great. He's a little boy and kind of a typical little boy, and he's got a group of friends. And in his case, the very first story actually was about him wanting to, of course, be someone other than who he was, and he went off and tried to be all these other animals, and in each case, it didn't quite work out. So he ended up going back to, embracing his family and his parents, and then that actually concept was easy to translate today into another form, which are these holiday books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were telling me that not too long ago you decided that you were just going to kind of pack up and travel for a year, which is something that I think would terrify a lot of people. Where do you get the courage to just kind of like, this is what I think I want to do, and I'm going to do it?
I don't know, but I remember waking up at night to a voice, and I knew it was my mother's, and she had already passed away. And it was, "What are you doing?" she said. And it was her voice, and I knew exactly what she meant by that. I was at a point in my life where I felt like I needed a change, and I didn't know what it was going to take, what it would involve. And then it occurred to me that, well, why not travel?
Mm-hmm.
Travel for a year. Give yourself a year and go to exotic countries. And I also love the idea of doing it alone. And before I left, I had a lot of questions, and it was mostly from the male friends in my life, boy, that's so brave. How can you do that? But I don't know. I had no fear. And so I did it. I think it was within a day or so, I called a realtor, put my house on the market. It sold quickly. I have a cousin and her husband who have a storage business and moving business. And so they came and they got all my furniture, put it in storage. And, I got rid of my car. It was so freeing. It was just an incredible experience. And it really changed my life. I was also at a point in my career where I wasn't feeling inspired. So when I left, I'd given myself a year and I wasn't going to work. I was, of course, I had money from selling my house. So I felt this was something I could afford to do. And when I got back, I'd figure out the rest of my life. But I ended up, I spent most of my time in Thailand, which was a very, very nurturing country. Massages were like $4, $5 for an hour massage. So I had a lot of, just nurturing experiences. And the people were so kind and warm and loving and accepting. I took lots of yoga classes, swam in the waters, and I didn't work. And I did a lot of inner work, journaling, positive, affirming, and it wasn't necessarily about coming home to get back into writing again. It didn't really matter. I just knew that there were good things waiting for me back home. And it was so amazing to me when I think back on this now. About 2 weeks before I was due to come home, I got an email from Random House asking me if I'd like to do more PJ Funny Bunny books. And it was ironic because for years I would go back and ask if they were interested. And, probably the timing wasn't right. People come and go, as in every business. But for some reason, the time was right. So I came back, and on my way home, I stopped in New York, and I met with this woman who, her name is Sonali, and she was the one whose idea it was to bring Sonali Fry, I'm sorry, didn't say her last name, but she was a wonderful editor. And so we worked on that next PJ book together. And since then, I think there've been two more. So 3 altogether since I got back. And then, of course, that led to this series of It's Not Easy Being books. And it's been wonderful. But it was that year of self-contemplation and journaling and visualizing and just being happy to get up every day.
That's wonderful.
Now when people ask me how to, get a book published, I think they want to hear the steps that you go through. But in my case, the steps were more internal. Mm-hmm. And so I love to talk to them about that. And people get it. Mm-hmm. I think they just don't think that kind of thing is necessarily possible, but it was the easiest thing I've ever done, and just opened up so many doors. And of course, it was after that when I found out Xenon was coming back in the form of a live action series. And so I recommend that to any aspiring writers, just to take time off and do more internal work.
Okay, yeah. What about a young aspiring author, somebody who might still be in middle school or high school? What advice, and they certainly can't fly off to Thailand to get massages every day, but, what kind of inner work would you suggest that they do?
Probably using their imagination, not worrying so much about the words that you're putting down on a page, but the concept itself. And then, in fact, a lot of times when I'm working on a book, I'll stretch out on the couch and close my eyes and just let my mind wander. And sometimes also it's just a matter of seeing a scene in a story. And from that one scene, which maybe what attracted you to begin with was the humor of the scene you're imagining, and then back up from there and begin to create a story around that. How did that character get in that position in the first place? And what is it about that character's personality that made that scene come to you in the first place? And then work from there. But I highly recommend stretching out on your couch or your bed, closing your eyes, and just letting your mind wander.
Wonderful.
And the personality of the character, of course, is what drives the book. So, and that's the most fun too, is thinking about that character and giving it a personality. And the books I like, I love humor, so I'm usually trying to make a character look a little silly or have a sense of humor, his or herself. So a lot of times it'll just come from a scene I envision of a character doing something, or and usually something that's going to make me laugh. The very first book was a book titled Alistair's Elephant, and that was the one that we got published in London, England. And Roger Bolin originally, of course, was the illustrator on that book, and also the illustrator for the It's Not Easy Being a Bunny book. But so I decided to make Alistair a British character, and that was fun because, we all have perceptions of how we think maybe people from different parts of the world live their lives or react. And to me, the British people at that time first of all, they had that kind of tongue-in-cheek humor. Those were the days of Monty Python. It was intelligent and funny humor. But so I sort of incorporated that. The character's name was Alistair Griddle. And he was very orderly and neat and tidy. And, if it threatened rain, he always had his umbrella. But so that was the very first book I wrote. And I went on to write 4 more Alistair books after that. I'm not sure why I brought that up. I'm not sure what that.
It was fascinating, so that's okay.
Yeah, and I just love that character. He's still someone I think about wanting to revive. Yeah, there were 5 books in all, and they were usually bigger than life situations. For example, in one story, he was returning his books to the library because he always returned them on time. And while walking to the library, he was whisked off into space by some aliens on a spaceship. And he's on the greatest adventure of a child's life, and all he can think about is getting those books back to the library. So, but that the humor in that book I felt was very British.
Yeah. Well, I am a big fan of British humor. My wife was horrified when my daughter was in 3rd grade. I introduced her to Monty Python in the Search for the Holy Grail. Me and my daughter and my son just roared with laughter, and my wife just didn't get it. And she's like, this isn't appropriate. It's great.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit some of those films.
Yeah. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about It's Not Easy Being a Leprechaun and find out more about you, because you've had a pretty fascinating life, I think.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think the It's Not Easy books and the Leprechaun book, it's in Target now, and of course all major bookstores. There's always Amazon, but I like to see people go to bookstores. We want to keep those alive, and on street corners where we can have access easily to all the books. And I also wanted to mention too, Steph Liberis is the illustrator of the It's Not Easy Being books. And oh my gosh, she's just very talented. She's an animator as well. She's animated things for DreamWorks, for Disney, PBS's workshop, is it? Yeah, very, very talented. I love her art. It's just so colorful and alive and kind of quirky.
That's great. That's great. And folks can visit your website as well, correct?
Yes.
And that's MarilynSadler.net?
.net. My sister-in-law, whose name is Marilyn, and she ended up marrying my brother, and her first name was Marilyn, or is Marilyn. So we end up sharing a name, but she got MarilynSadler.com before I could get it. I always like to tease her.
So, well, if somebody makes a mistake and they go to .com,
I know.
Close. You're just 1 degree separated from our guest here today.
She's an incredible artist. So
wonderful. Well, we'll check that out too. We've had a great time speaking to the author of It's Not Easy Being a Leprechaun. Our guest has been Marilyn Sadler. Marilyn, thanks so much for taking time to be with us today.
Well, thank you so much. I very much enjoyed speaking with you, and I love talking about my work, so thank you.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures, delightful children's book written by Helen Rogerson. Woofy awakens suddenly to a feeling that his friend Bun needs him. When he arrives at the place his nose leads him, Woofy is confused and doesn't find Bun right away. Then a shout from above leads to an amazing experience as he puts his paleontology skills to work. Together, he, Bun, and a cat that hangs around the site wrap up a wonderful adventure involving a T-Rex skull and a very cool twist of an ending. The story is told in a lyrical style that incorporates actual fossil hunting concepts and vocabulary. If you like dinosaurs, friends who help, and adventures, you will love this book. You can check out Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures and all the Woofy books at unpackyourownhappy.com. Join us right now from New York City. Our guest is here today to celebrate something a little bit different. How would you like your kid to build a robot? That would be pretty cool. Well, our guest can make that happen. She is the driving force behind Brooklyn Robot Foundry. Please welcome to the show, Jenny Young. Hey, Jenny, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's exciting to be here.
Delighted to have you on. I was recently at an event in Edison, New Jersey at the PTO Today Expo, promoting the podcast, promoting some of the authors that have been on the show. And right across from my booth was the booth for the Brooklyn Robot Foundry. And boy, oh boy, people were really fascinated by what you folks are doing.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. It's a really fun business. And who doesn't want to build a robot with a kid? I mean, that's the funnest thing ever.
Absolutely. So tell us, you were telling me before we started recording that you're, half of your work is going into schools and helping kids at school and after school programs learn about robots, and the other half is dealing directly with families. Why don't we talk first about the family side of the business?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I started the business about 14 years ago, and we're based out of New York City. But about 2 years ago, I started franchising the business. So now we have franchise owners across the Northeast and even further than that as well soon. And basically what the business model is that you sell robot classes that organizations will bring you in to do a robot building class with their kids, so their students. So it might be a school, it might be the principal brings you in during the school day and you're going to augment their science curriculum. It might be that you're selling to an after-school provider and you're going to be working with kids, say, every Tuesday for 40 Tuesdays in a row after the typical school day is done. So that's we also work with daycares, nursery schools. That's the B2B side of the business. So, business to business, where you're selling to organizations. We are going to where the students are. We're bringing everything that you need, all the materials, all the tools. We bring the teachers as well. And then we build robots with those kids. So that's 50% of the business. The other 50% of the business is the B2C side, so business to consumer, where because we have these beautiful partnerships with these organizations through the school year, we then utilize their space when the kids aren't in school, so summer or full day sessions or spring break sessions. We use the space that that they're not using, and then we host kind of pop-up classes, and that's where the parents are paying to send their kids, basically like a summer camp where they'll come for the full day or they'll come for a full week of summer. They'll spend 6 hours with us. We'll be building robots. We'll be doing projects. We'll be playing. We'll be chilling. It's a really fun time. And then we also do things like on the weekends, we do birthday parties. So rather than having a magician you'd bring us in and we would be building robots with the kids. We also do some corporate team building with adults too. So if there are any adults out there that want to build a robot, that is something we do as well.
Now, when you're talking about building robots, my beautiful wife, we occasionally take care of our neighbor who is 2. And my beautiful wife has this little thing from her time teaching where you push the buttons and you're basically programming it to move back and forth or turning. So we're talking about building something like that, or like the robot on Lost in Space, the Danger, Will Robinson.
I love it. Our robots actually look pretty different than what a lot of people would think about when they think of robots. So our robots are a combination of arts and crafts and then actually real world engineering as well. So we start at age 2. So we start really little. So those kids they're not ready to do programming yet. They're going to be building really simple kind of electromechanical devices. So they might build a little project that looks like a robot and it has a blinking light on its head, or they might build themselves a little portable fan to cool themselves off in the summer. But our projects, if you were to pick them up and look at them, they look like something that your child would make in a typical art class, except they're like a little extra special. There's electronics on it. They're spinning, they're lighting up, they're moving. So it's really this beautiful combination of art and design is what we do. And our projects are intentionally designed very open-ended. So if you were to walk into a classroom and we give the kids all the same kits of parts, the thing that is like absolutely beautiful is at the end of the class, if you were to look at all the robots that the different kids built, they will all look very, very different. And they'll have the kid's own little flair on each robot. And they can actually even kind of put them together in different ways. But they're all learning real engineering. They're learning real engineering concepts. They're building with their hands. It's completely screen free. So it's just a very free form kind of experience. And there's a lot of joy in that.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. What kind of STEM, you mentioned engineering, programming, you mentioned the 2-year-olds aren't ready for programming, but what kind of engineering things are kids going to learn kind of by osmosis, I guess, when they're 2, 3, 4 years old?
They're going to learn a lot. So they're going to learn real electrical engineering and mechanical engineering principles. So we're going to teach them what is an LED, what does LED stand for, what happens if you wire an LED backwards, what happens if you wire a motor backwards, what is a circuit when you plug things in together and you unplug them and plug them again. That's basically what a switch is. So we're letting the kids understand that when you have a complete circle of electricity, your component turns on or lights up. When you break that complete circle, that's basically turning the things on and off. So a 2-year-old can absolutely understand if I unplug these two pieces together, my light turns off. And if I plug them in again, my light turns on. And if I wire it backwards, my light doesn't work. And so it's really a lot about this hands-on exploration where we're allowing the kids to experiment in a space that's very safe. It's very fun. And we aren't necessarily saying there's a right or wrong answer. It's just the art of exploring and the process of building is the thing that we really emphasize.
Where did you get the inspiration for this?
It's such a good question. So I grew up in Ohio, in a small town outside of Cleveland. And my family is just a family of makers. We always make things with their hands. I was always taking my toys apart as a kid. My father is a mechanical engineer. My mother is just very crafty and does things with her hands. So I grew up in this space where it was just very normal to experiment through building and experiment through taking things apart. I then went to college. I went to at Purdue and was an engineering student there, and I grew up using heavy equipment as well. So I know how to use like all different types of machines and to manufacture things. And so when I was in college, I was working at the student machine shop, and I was realizing, oh, there's a lot of mechanical engineering students who are here that get really, really good grades, but they actually don't understand how things in the physical world work or how to put things together. And they're also not used to failing. So anybody who is a maker is very used to every time you make something, it doesn't work. Something falls off. You didn't screw it on well enough. You made a silly mistake in your design. You have to go back and you have to tweak it and then do it again. And so I'm very comfortable with failing, and I enjoy it. It's actually like kind of joyful when you're kind of working through some things. And what I realized in college is like a lot of people aren't that way. And that is because they didn't grow up knowing that failure is totally fine and failure is just a means to kind of learn something more. And so that was what made me start the business. As I was working at an education technology startup, they were doing predictive assessments where you can imagine those Scantron bubble sheets that are the most uninspiring way to learn ever, where there's just a right or wrong answer. All the kids were bored. It's horrible. It makes you wonder why nobody wants to go to school. And that was where I realized, wow, I wish that I could give everybody in the world my upbringing so that they can feel comfortable with failure, so that they can feel comfortable experimenting, so that they can see engineering is so fun, and to kind of give people that intro into how creative engineering can be. So that's why I started, is I wanted to give kids, I was living in New York City in 230 square feet. And I said, how in the world are kids learning how to take things apart in these very small spaces where there are no workshops, there are no garages, and the school system is not set up to allow this type of learning. So that's why I started. I started it 14 years ago, and it's been a really incredible journey.
Well, a shiver went through my spine when you said you were living in 230 square feet.
I know, it's like totally like mind blowing, right?
If I walked into a hotel room that small, I'd turn around. But that's why I live in Boston. I don't live in New York City. It's really that whole mindset of it's okay to fail. I think that is so very, very important to stress to kids right now. And it's been interesting. You know, I hadn't really thought that much about it. I certainly failed in my life, and I, pick myself up and, move on, but I didn't realize how much thought was behind it and how important failing is in fields like engineering and science and things like that. I'm hearing a lot of people now in the news talking because he's become so politicized, but that, kind of making fun of Elon because this failed or whatever. And like, oh, he's not very good at all. He's failed without realizing that, hey, it's part of the process. And so I really hope that our current polarization doesn't interfere with somebody like you teaching kids it's okay to fail. We learn from our failures. Every failure is one step closer to success.
Yeah. I mean, I think that our education system really has veered away from teaching entrepreneurship, from teaching kids that it is an okay thing and it is a part of life. And the minute you fail, you realize you've just tried to do something hard. And that really is where growth comes from, right? That is like really where empowerment comes from. So if you are the type of person that has never failed in life, it actually means you probably didn't push yourself to the point where you should have. I have this talk that I sometimes give when we go into these teacher conferences, all about the importance of failure and the importance of knowing that anytime you fail, you're not a failure. It really just means you're doing something hard, and maybe you'll never get over that thing. Maybe it isn't something that you can solve, but you will know that you pushed yourself to the limit of what you're capable of doing. But the vast majority of the time you do push past it, right? Mm-hmm. Or you will come up with a solution that's way better than the solution that you thought it was going to be. Or you will take input from the diverse group of humans that are on your team that come from different backgrounds with different ideas. And in the end, you'll come up with something really remarkable. And so that to me is what true engineering is. It's problem solving, it's listening, it's thinking, it's not taking something as a setback, as a, oh my goodness, I'm going to sit down and feel bad for myself, but, oh, okay, what can I learn, from that? And what can I take away from that? I didn't realize until I got to college that was not a normal thing that everybody does. And, at my dinner table growing up, my family is very funny. They laugh a lot. And so the thing we would do at our dinner table, and we always would have family dinner, is we would talk about what did everybody do today that didn't go well. And then we would laugh at each other a little bit and kind of make fun of each other. But then we would also be problem solving together, and what were the things that you think you could do back? And then the next day or the next week, you'd come back and maybe you had gotten a little further along on the thing that you were trying to create. And so I think that's pretty special. And so that's the thing that we are trying to create with this brand. And then also, now that we franchised it, that's extending into the future franchise owners as well, where we are giving them a space where they have the support of a company that's been doing it for 14 years, but they're learning kind of through that experimentation how to be their own business owner and how to create an asset that has worth and something that, can be passed on to the generations if that's what they want to do. And so you're really creating that entrepreneur spirit for adults as well as for the kids that are coming in to the program. So it's kind of like taking empowerment to the next level, which is really an amazing experience.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. We may have some people out there listening who are loving what they're hearing from you and thinking, maybe I want to get involved. What needs to happen? What kind of investment do people have to have, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our business is a mobile business. So you don't have a brick and mortar. You know, you're going into people's schools, you're going to people's homes, and you can get this business started up very quickly. So in terms of franchising, the initial investment is actually very low, kind of in comparison to like a quick service food brand. So in order to get the business up and running, it'll take about $90,000 to $120,000. So that's your initial investment. You will have a small commercial space where you're holding your inventory. We want you to have 3 months of working capital. There's a fee to kind of like sign on for the brand. And so that's really basically what we think you'll need to invest in order to get the business up and running. And the type of person that we're looking for, some people think, oh, I have to be an engineer, but you don't. We can teach a 5-year-old how to build a robot. We can teach an adult. The type of person who is like our ideal candidate is a person who is somebody who is known in their community, or someone who would be excited to be known in their community. It's a person who has great people skills. It's a person who, you know, is a people person. A big part of the role is business development as a franchise owner. So you have to be a person who can feel comfortable going into a school. Maybe you were a former teacher or a former school administrator and you know how all of the school systems work. Or maybe you were the head of the PTA and you kind of are in that space and you understand in your community how the school system works, how they bring in programs. So it's a person that's interested in doing business development, interested in building really strong relationships. Because once you get the business, so long as you run it correctly, you will get those contracts renewed year over year over year over year. So we have contracts that we've had for over a decade because we're beloved. When we go into a school, it's the kids' one of their favorite programs. It's super duper fun. And so we just renew our contracts year over year. So we're looking for a person that would sound fun to them and it'd be something that they'd be good at. And then the other way you grow your business is you hire additional teachers. So the franchise owner is not going to be teaching in the classroom. They are really the person running the business, and we want them to think about it like at a higher level. But they will be hiring part-time teachers. And so it has to be a person who is good at coaching, at mentoring people. Maybe it was someone who was in the classroom before and they have the skills to be like, oh, as a teacher, here's the different things that we think about with classroom management. If they don't have a teaching background, that's okay. We know how to do that. So that's something that we would train you up on. But you do have to be a person that, knows how to knows how to listen to your employees, knows how to understand the things that they need, and knows how to coach them when they need coaching to, kind of improve, and improve the service that they're going to be giving for you. So it's a people person is what we're looking for.
If somebody is out there either interested in learning more about becoming a franchisee, or if there's a teacher or an administrator out there who would like to get you into their school, where can they go to find out more about Brooklyn Robot Foundry?
Thanks. You can go to our website, which is brooklynrobotfoundry.com. There is a franchising thing up in the top banner. If you're interested in learning more about franchising, go ahead and click that. There's a contact me on that main page as well if you want us to bring robots to your school. So we're excited to talk to anybody. The franchise process is it's not like high pressure sales. Basically, the process that we go through is just a discovery process. It's very informal, but the intent of that process is for us to learn about each other and see, hey, is this something that we think that you want? Is this something that we think you would be good at? And then, do we think that you'd be a good fit for our brand? But it's almost a little bit like dating, where we're starting to get to know each other, trying to start to understand like what your goals and aspirations are for the future, and then see if this is kind of a good fit. So if anybody has any little inkling of, I wonder if that would be something for me. I'm a little bit interested in just hearing more. We'd love to talk to people. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't really know. I don't want to waste your time. But it's not wasting our time. We're happy to even talk to people that are like, well, I'm just kind of tossing this around. That's fine. So yeah.
Awesome. We've had a really great time speaking to the driving force behind Brooklyn Robot Foundry. She's not a robot. She's a delightful person. Our guest has been Jenny Young. Jenny, thanks so much for being with us.
And thank you so much for having me. It was absolutely my pleasure. I really appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and would join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, we'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, and our website is readingwithyourkids.com. Hey, if you have a moment and you love Reading With Your Kids, please consider leaving a 5-star review on whatever platform you find Reading With Your Kids. Of course, you can find Reading With Your Kids on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, wherever you find your favorite shows. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Marilyn Sadler. Please be sure to check out It's Not Easy Being a Leprechaun. And also want to thank Jenny Young. Please be sure to check out the Brooklyn Robot Foundry. You may want to find one in your neighborhood, or you may want to become a franchisee. We can help you with that too here at readingwithyourkids.com. You can go to readingwithyourkids.com and send us a message, and we'll put you in touch with Jenny. Also want to thank the folks at FeedSpot for naming us to 2 of their wonderful list. Of course, feedspot.com. We are now number 5 in the 100 Best Children's Book Podcasts and number 2 in the 60 Best Reading Podcasts. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.